Okay, so I'm sure a lot of people have heard the news about Duolingo right now, and as someone who's used it for 8 years and has had a side passion of language learning, I felt obligated to make this video. I'm going to be going over my feelings about Duolingo over the past 8 years and why Duolingo has been failing as a language learning app. So first, a little testimony on my own experience with Duolingo. When I was in 8th grade, my French teacher gave me Duolingo as a tool to use to learn French. I kept using it up until high school in order to keep practicing the language as I live in Canada and am required to take French from 4th to 9th grade. After 10th grade, I stopped taking French and switched to Italian on Duolingo. When I got to college, I decided to switch to Esperanto and then a year and a half later, Japanese. I don't remember much of what I learned. Only fragments remain in my mind, and the entire time I was using Duolingo, I struggled to output sentences in my mind unless the pieces were right in front of me. As we all know, Duolingo is a language learning service that promotes themselves as the best way to learn a language. As of writing this script, Duolingo offers 39 languages for English learners, with the additional intermediate English, math, and music. Duolingo also tells their users how many people are learning the language. However, these numbers are faulty/inflated, as it shows how many accounts are signed up for the course and not the amount of active learners. In addition to this, a large variety of these courses have not had updates in years. Courses used to be made by volunteers, but ever since they became a publicly traded company, this has since been dropped. Duolingo has also been focusing on updating the more popular courses first, which are Spanish, French, Japanese, and so on. And courses like Esperanto have not been updated in years. Now, before I delve into how Duolingo works, I want to talk about the best way to learn a language. Research has consistently shown that the best way to learn a language is to immerse yourself in it. This includes listening to others, speaking to them, reading, writing, studying, anything. You can't just pick up a textbook and learn something yourself. You have to have some sort of hands-on experience with your target language and use it. This is where Duolingo heavily falters. The main way Duolingo has its user studies is by having users translate a sentence using a word bank. This is not immersion at all. To compensate for this, there is also the occasional audio and speaking exercise. However, you are not conversing with an actual human being, just repeating and translating voice recordings. On top of this, if you make a mistake, you lose a life and are told the correct answer. However, the only feedback you get are underlined words that you got incorrect. In addition to this, translations usually require a very specific translation and may not have any room for leniency. Losing lives is objectively the worst feature about Duolingo. Everybody knows this. The lives feature was a huge point of stress for me in my early days of Duolingo, as I was more concerned about keeping my lives intact than actually learning my target language. When you use a total of 5 lives, you're locked out of doing any lessons. If you wish to continue, you have 3 options. You may use Lingots, an in-game currency you earn through using the app, to refill your hearts, or you may purchase a Duolingo super subscription to give yourself unlimited lives. Practicing outside of lessons is also an option. Now, you may argue that regaining hearts through practice lessons is a good thing. Refreshing your mistakes is vital to the learning process and should be highly encouraged. This is true. However, Duolingo has been considering removing practice lessons for free users. In addition to this, they have already disabled the practice feature for users with a full live gauge. This has been a feature for a few years now. If you don't choose to practice or purchase new lives via Lingots or use real-world money, you must wait 5 hours for 1 life to regenerate. The big issue also comes with the fact that Duolingo does have a specialized lesson for a weak spot. The problem is they are locked behind a paywall. Another thing Duolingo does is purposely keep lessons long and boring. Lessons consist of making translations using a word bank with little wiggle room for different translations and/or errors. At the same time, a large variety of courses do not teach the user grammar. While there is some grammar involved in courses that have more development than others, like Spanish and French, in most courses they are neatly tucked away under a notes section at the top of your unit bar. This is used to increase the chances of someone making a mistake and losing lives, prompting them to pay for Lingots or purchase a super subscription. At the end of a lesson as well, Duolingos are given a advertisement for Super Duolingo. As a side note, while I was learning Japanese, Duolingo taught me little to no kanji. These are special characters that are very frequent within the language. There are thousands of them with varying meanings and pronunciations and combinations. So if it wasn't obvious by now, Duolingo's main method of monetization is to funnel people into purchasing super subscriptions. They do this by fooling their users into thinking that they are learning a language with long and boring lessons that barely teach the user anything and keep them there for long periods of time. They use the lives feature as a way to pressure users into paying subscription fees. Otherwise users won't think they are learning anything at all. So with Duolingo's main method of monetization in place by keeping the user in the app as much as possible, let's talk about what Super Duolingo actually offers the player, as well as other ways they try to keep you on the app. Duolingo has a streak system, meaning that every day you use the app and complete a lesson, your streak goes up. Friend streaks are also in place to make users feel like they don't want to fail their friends. Friend streaks are the same as Snapchat. However, your main streak and your friend streak are separate. Friends can also participate in quests. Quests are where two players contribute to the same goal in order to receive an XP boost. Friends can also nudge each other to complete both friend streaks and friend quests. Limited time themed badges that take a decent amount of effort to complete are also in play. Duolingo uses the tactic of fear of missing out in order to push players to complete these badges. You also have a month to do so. Duolingo also has achievements and a competitive leaderboard to make players feel like they're achieving something and to be better than other people. Duolingo also sends periodic notifications using language that tries to peer pressure their players into using the app. This type of language also applies to friend nudges, and I'll show some on screen right now. They also have an in-app newsletter that tries to keep you interested in language learning and how the process actually works. They also have fun facts and grammar tips between loading times. Usually, though, you don't have enough time between loading to actually read these. There are also motivational messages like "You got this," "You can do it," "You're on fire" between exercises as well. XP boosts are another beast. They are used immediately upon obtaining them, which pressures you to try and do as many lessons as possible before they expire, usually after 15 to 30 minutes. XP boosts can also be obtained by completing a set amount of lessons, friend requests, and by friends sending them to you. So now, what does Super Duolingo actually offer you? A dictionary. There is no dictionary in the free version. The main selling point is that you also have infinite lives, as well as the ability to practice weak spots with extra speaking and listening exercises on demand. You also are told that you are supporting free education when Duolingo does indeed run advertisements. There are also no more. Duolingo also does tell you that you won't receive any more subscriptions ads. However, that's not necessarily true, as there is another tier of subscription, which is Duolingo Max. Duolingo Max enables you to have conversations with AI and have AI correct your mistakes. All of these features that I've just described, or most of them, are essential to the language learning process. As stated before, Duolingo markets themselves as the best way to learn a language for free. However, that's obviously not the case. I would also like to take this time to talk about my position about artificial intelligence. I believe that it is fundamentally a good thing, as it is a tool. However, people tend to use them incorrectly. In a good way, the AI can be used to enhance lesson, and they are already doing that. Duolingo has a feature called video calls, which allows you to talk to the AI for a very brief amount of time. However, this is a one-time feature, and you can only do one video call one time until the next video call lesson comes up. When monitored correctly, it can be a very helpful tool for learning languages. However, Duolingo is also using it extremely incorrectly. Duolingo only has 2 full-time customer support staff and are moving forward with replacing employees with artificial intelligence. This is obviously a bad thing, as people are losing their jobs, with the addition of customer support being very overwhelmed. This is also a possibility of AI making incorrect moves in any situation that's not being monitored, such as lessons, customer support. Now I would like to talk about a few things that Duolingo has either dumbed down or completely removed. And first few complaints will be in the category of anti-user generated content. First, the forums. Everybody knows the forums. While I never used them due to being a teenager at the time, I've heard a lot of complaints about them being removed. It acted as a way for people to discuss exercises and lessons and to get help on why they got answers wrong. The forums were most likely deleted to save money on moderation as well as to have users make more mistakes in order to push advertisements for Super Duolingo. Secondly, Duolingo has gotten rid of volunteer-made courses in favor of scientifically accurate courses. This is so that they can control the flow of courses in order to push as many super advertisements as possible. Thirdly, Duolingo removed the ability to use your own custom profile picture. You can no longer set an image to set it as your profile, and you now have to use a templated profile picture in order to express yourself. This may also have been done to save money on moderation expenses. Now for a few other miscellaneous things. My second point regarding user-made content also goes into the fact that while using Duolingo, you cannot choose what type of material you want to learn. Say, you're a cook and you want to get a job in a foreign country. Duolingo will not allow you to skip ahead to subjects such as fruit, vegetables, and cooking appliances unless you are able to pass a skip-ahead lesson for the material that you desire. This is a method of control that they use, forcing you to keep learning material that you don't want to learn in order to keep you in the app as much as possible. The shop is also something that has been severely dumbed down. You used to be able to purchase a lot more items than you could now. These items included cosmetics for Duo, idiom lessons, and double or nothing challenges. Duolingo has also lowered the amount of streak freezes that you can have on hand from what I remember to be 5 to 2. The last thing that really bothered me was Duolingo's very strange marketing. I could see why they went for all the strange marketing tactics such as being relatable and all these other ridiculous things, such as the whole Spanish or Vanish trend. But what really angered me was when they killed the Duolingo owl. Lots of people jumped on the trend, including celebrities, and it gave the company a huge boost. What really angered me was the fact that dying isn't funny. That should not be joked about, especially when loved ones are involved. Imagine seeing these advertisements as soon as your grandmother passed away. It would be a nightmare to live in a world where you're feeling the pain of someone's death, and then someone comes along joking and making a marketing scheme about dying. This isn't funny or relatable, period. Now, before I end the video on a high note, I'd like to talk about why I quit. I slowly realized over the past few years that the only reason I just kept using the app was because I felt pressured to use it. I wasn't finding joy in learning Japanese as lessons were extremely slow, and I wasn't being taught the material that I needed in order to have proper conversations in the language. Long story short, I felt enslaved to my streak. Now, to end this video on a good note, I would like to talk about ways that Duolingo could make their service a little healthier in terms of spending money. What I believe is the healthiest way to make money would be to offer users intrinsic satisfaction such as cosmetics instead of relying on the intrinsic motivation to be able to use the service. Removing hearts and giving users the incentive to spend money for intrinsic gain would be a much healthier solution instead of forcing players to spend money in order to feel psychologically safe for their ability to learn. Players would no longer have to fork over money in order to feel safe using Duolingo.